The name of the lecture is Law, Media, Politics, the Way to Win. Now, I'm probably going to start like I do a magazine and read from the back. And so let's talk about winning. What is winning to you? Now, in 1966, I was born. And in 1966, this was the definition of winning. Now, not many of you remember that, but maybe us professors remember that now. But it was simpler then. Sometimes in the law, it's not quite so simple anymore, but the effects are much greater. And most people have an image of the American law system as lawyers with large fees, overpriced fees. We work on something different. We work on a contingency fee, which means we get a percentage. In other words, the person that's been injured does not have to present and pay us by the hour. They give us a percentage at the end. We like it better. It's more of a capitalist system because we invest a lot of money into these cases. It costs a lot of money to prosecute these cases, to travel, to take depositions, to go through the discovery process. It's very expensive in the American system. But we invest that money, and at the end of the case, then we get some of that back. The case is also, for example, in Costa Concordia, we have many partners. I'm just the face of our Eaves Law legal team. There are many other lawyers working on this, and those fees are always divided. So at the end of the day, it's not always the big win that you might read in the media about. But I think it's important in life to do what you love to do. It's important because you must receive that personal touch. And I tell you, the most important things to me as a lawyer is the results we get. And that is to put a smile on someone's face, to give someone some security after they've lost a loved one or after they've lost through injury. That is, for me, that is the personal reward at the end. And also seeing that the world is not as it is, but sometimes it can be as it should be. A world that has justice. Now, justice is the foundation of any society. And as you may know, even the United States was begun because of perception of injustice. This is a picture from the Boston Tea Party, when the Americans thought that it was unfair and unjust for England to overtax them. And so they threw all the tea into the water. And so you see this happen in governments. You see when there's a perceived injustice in government, or government does not address injustice, then you see those dramatic changes taking place. We see that even now in the Middle East with Egypt and the other nations. You see the fact that a lot of people perceive that there's not adequate justice, that the society is not growing. And so I want to submit to you that the pursuit of justice is a worthy life experience. It's a worthy way to spend your life to make sure that you have a just society that is stable, that is ever growing, and that is getting better all the time. So let me give you the importance here. We're in Munich, Germany. This town is known all over the world for culture, for arts. But for me, from Mississippi, it's known for this, BMW, my favorite brand of car. Excellence in every sense of the word. Now, does anybody in here have any relatives or friends that work with BMW, by chance? One. All right. Thank you. Now, why is BMW the greatest automobile company in the world? Because they're always designing, they're always engineering, they're always redeveloping. And so what does this picture have to do with law practice? This is a design. This is an imagination of what a car can be. If you don't keep imagining, then your society will never achieve a parallel of this automobile. So what I want to challenge you is to love justice and to also see yourselves not only in the discipline of academic study that you are, but also see yourself as sort of society's justice engineer, society's justice designer, if you will, because of its importance. Now, my personal mission is to protect life. And this is what life looks like for me. This is my 3-year-old daughter named Ava. And she is so full of life. This is what life looks for me. And for you or for some other people, life may look more like this. But whatever life is to you, life is important. Life is valuable. It is precious. It is a treasure. It is a gift given to you. And we need to be about protecting that gift. Now, we live in a free market. Corporations make decisions based on the financial advantages. Is it more advantage to invest in safety, or is it more important to just pay claims? That decision is made every day in the corporate boardrooms. So you sort of, like anything, it scales. They're weighing the benefits of protecting life versus the cost of doing that. And so when companies spend more money in protecting life, then I believe that we win. Now, we have a saying in the United States. We say, do it right the first time. I kind of think that we got this value from Germans. I don't know why, but everything I see about your society is do it right. Quality first. Now, you may say, was du tust, tu es Richter. I'm in training here. But the idea is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, let me give you a couple of examples. First of all, we have this. Does anybody recognize what this is? This is the Ford Pinto. This is the beginning of the consumer movement in America. This Pinto was built in 1977. It had a fuel tank that would break off, and the nuts would break through and puncture in a collision. The fuel would pour into the passenger compartment, and it would burn the victims. Now, the sad thing is that this could have been prevented and repaired for $11. But the company knew about it, and they chose to pay claims. The result was that in a court verdict, the injured family from this one was paid $2.5 million. But what's significant is that the court ordered the company Ford to pay $3.5 million for what we call punitive damages. Now, punitive damages is simply the idea that the action was so offensive that you profited from something that you should have done right the first time. And so the courts want to take away this benefit that the company has by not doing it right. Okay? This is important. This will come play itself out in Costa Concordia, as we'll talk about later. So the next thing here is this was a bad drug called formaldehyde. Is sort of the beginning of the pharmaceutical litigation in the United States. It was given to mothers to treat morning sickness from 1957 until 1961. and it was found afterwards to be causing defects. You see what a horrible thing that it does to a child. And when you're weighing the difference between morning sickness or this happening to your child, it should be an easy choice to make. This is the place that these decisions will be changed. That's our prayer. Another big thing that has changed, of course, is big tobacco. This actually, I put this in here because the litigation over tobacco companies began in Mississippi with a few friends of mine. They were the lawyers and the Attorney General of Mississippi. They asked my firm to participate. It's one of those things I will regret for a long time because my father said no, the tobacco companies are too powerful. And we did not participate, unfortunately, at that level, at that time. We did later. We represented several nations. We represented the country of Ukraine against the tobacco companies. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not perfect. We lost those cases. We lost them because every time we would visit a country and say, we'd talk to the Minister of Health and we'd say, we want to help you, we can recover money for your government for the lost medical cost. The Minister of Health would always be very excited. He would start to dream of ways that they could improve their medical system. And by the time that I could get the contract signed, well, guess what? The Prime Minister's cousin, nephew, niece, uncle, somebody had a really nice contract working for the American company Philip Morris. And so that's how I did not succeed in those cases. So, you know, I think that it's important to note something here. And I'd just like to say this, that I think it's somewhat different, the American system and the German system. I think here in Germany you have much more a sense of community, from what I can tell you. You have much more of a cooperative spirit. In the United States, it is not this cooperation between industry and consumers. They don't even talk. We don't talk until we're in a courtroom. You know, it's a pure free market calculation, unfortunately. That's something that I hope to change in America, to be a little bit more like you so we can talk before to prevent accidents. My favorite saying to companies and to insurance companies is I say, you know what, do it right the first time and put me out of business. Let me do something else. Maybe I can teach. So, you know, so I think it's significant. You know, I think it's significant to point out here, this is some of the security things on a BMW. That BMW has taken a unique position. They have not only responded, they have seen safety as a way to sell more cars. And I tell you, there's a lot of people, me being one of them, that have bought BMWs because of their safety record. I wish and hope that the cruise industry will accept the same philosophy, and every industry will accept that same philosophy. Now, I don't know a lot about German law, but the Sun Tzu, the Chinese general strategist, wrote The Art of War, said three things. He said, know your terrain, which is know your battleground, know your enemy, and know yourself, and then you don't have to be afraid of any battle. So, knowing yourself means to know what I think is one of the most important things, and that is, to accomplish anything, you need one of these. You need a team. Now, I think it's interesting here. This is the German team, I hope. Yes? Yeah, okay. That's what I asked for. But every team, every member on here has different talents. Every team member has a different role to play. But it's the team effort that brings about results. It is the same way in my business. I have an amazing team. Today here I have Frau Paschel, right here. I'd like to think of her as my Mittelstormer. And this is Herr Verhoeven. Verhoeven is also known as Batman. He's more like the Torman. Torman, yeah. And of course I have Herr Schultz. There he is. He's my cultural attaché. I'd like to note that a lot of times when you're doing your research on your opponent, it's very important to know your opponent, okay? And with the way the world is now, it's very easy to do that with Google. But I don't want you to think that it's always just to beat him in court is the only way to win. Because a lot of times these powerful companies, they're not worried about what happens in court. They're not worried about a couple $1 million. They'll take that gamble. But what they won't do is they won't risk their stock prices. They won't risk their public perception. They won't risk the things that actually matter more to them than just the litigation. And so that is why, in essence, that I have this lecture, Law, Media, Politics, is because you need all three angles of attack. Now, so let's talk a minute about the media. And I want to tell you that on the front end that there are certain ethical considerations for attorneys and for other disciplines that apply. So if I tell you anything that conflicts with that, please don't listen to me, okay? In the United States, we sometimes have a gag order, which means we can't talk about a case. You'll see that in some high-profile cases. It's very rare. It's only 3% of the time. My most important rule in dealing with the media is to tell the truth. You don't always have to tell the other side, but your credibility is essential. And I believe, different than other people, that you should talk to the media. It's been my experience that most journalists simply want to ask the question that the public needs to know. They want to tell it accurately. There are always exceptions in everything, just like there are exceptions with bad lawyers. But I think that most journalists just simply want to tell the truth, to inform the public, to allow you to make a decision. We all, though, come with our own life experiences. We all come, especially journalists who've seen so many promises made and promises broken. It is natural for there to be a healthy skepticism. So it's important to protect your credibility. So what is the first rule of every speech? Any volunteers? The first rule, my first rule, is to know your audience. There you go. So your audience can look like this, the general public. Your audience could look like this. It could be one person that you're talking to, the media. And you want to talk to that one guy who might be watching. Your audience could be these guys. Yeah. Sometimes it's really hard to get their attention. And for me, honestly, with the Costa Concordia, these are the guys that I'm trying to talk to here. This is the cruise industry. Yeah. Then you ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish? When you get ready to talk to the media, what do I want to accomplish with it? Always tell your story. My first rule is to always tell your story with a sympathetic victim. Why is that? Because the victim was there. They can tell the story much better than you. Because the audience has already preconceived ideas of attorneys. They have preconceived ideas of others. And so the victim speaks for themselves. And it's much more credible experience. Now, I went to media training when I was running for governor of Mississippi back in 2007. The Democratic Party paid a very high price for me to go talk to the #1 media trainer in the country. He's the same media trainer that trained Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. I think he also, with Obama, Senator Kennedy, all of the Democrats, he contributed. Now he spent about 2 weeks with them, okay? I got 2 hours, okay? But in those 2 hours, I tried to soak up a few things. This is what I remember. First of all, every compelling argument has 3 points. Don't know why. Maybe there's a psychological reason. I don't know. So anytime I'm going to talk with the media, I always do one of these. I build a triangle. And it's to remind me that all of my arguments are connected. And so when I'm asked a question, I'll try to answer the question, and then I'll try to make sure I hit all 3 points. And I'll show you an example in a little bit. I think it's very important when you talk to me not to assume that because you give one interview that everybody in the world has heard that interview. And so I learned pretty quickly that you have to say it over and over and over again, the same thing. You have to say it over again because it doesn't really register until people hear things 3 times. And when you start hearing people in the public respond to you and repeat what you said, then you know you can move on to something else. I always say ask a friend in journalism to make a list of questions before an interview. And of course, every press event needs to have one of these, a press release. Press release needs to tell the very basics about what you're going to do, what you're going to say. If you can, make it a little teaser so that they actually want to talk to you in person. But put enough information in a press release so that when you send that press release out, that the writers can actually write a story just using your press release. A lot of times that happens in the United States. Now, specific things to remember about the differences between the written press, the radio, and the television. Now, with the written press, you remember, first of all, your audience. It's going to be a smaller percentage of the audience, probably 10 to 15%. So I don't know what it is here, but in the U.S. it's about 15% of the audience. They're usually older, educated people who read the newspaper. And what I always do is you have to remember with the paper, when you get called by the press, take a minute, say, let me call you right back. Write out your thoughts. Collect your wits about you. You know, we live in a chaotic world, and the phone is going 1 second. Somebody's talking, your friends are talking to you the next second. Lots of things are happening. So take a minute, get to a quiet place, write it down, relax, then call them back and tell them what you want to talk about. Don't be sarcastic. It doesn't show up well in print. And be straightforward, and take the time to make sure that the person on the line understands your concept and what you're trying to tell them. All right? So the next thing is radio. Now let me just make a point with you on radio here. Now, how many of our audience know that piece of music? Okay. All right. Does anybody know this one? That's more of a Mississippi thing, I think. Yeah. Okay. All right, now, how many people have heard the next song? Anybody heard this one? Okay, all right. I promised my kids I wouldn't dance, okay? So, a little too long, I know. So anyway, the point is this. The point is this. When you're talking on the radio, know your audience. Different people raise their hands about hearing different songs. So if you don't do anything in the world, turn to that radio station, listen to what they're playing, and think about that when you're talking to your audience. Okay? So, that's the point of that. In television, the audience is everyone. The main point here to remember is that they're only going to put a short clip of you on the news, 5, 10, 30 seconds at most. So you want to boil down what you're talking about. Now, my daddy has a saying. He says, don't ever say blah, blah, blah when blah is enough. Okay? So when you're talking on television, say what you want to say. Say it short, say it concise. If you say too much, they'll always play the too much, the part that you really didn't want on there. So say what you want to say and get off. Now, there's another thing that this media fellow that taught the Clintons taught me, and it's probably culturally different, okay? But he says when you're looking at someone, he said if you're looking and their head is still and straight like this, and all they're doing is moving their lips, it's not very interesting. It's a lot more interesting when you're doing your head like this on the television. Now, that's true in the United States. Now, it may be a little difference because here in Germany, you probably can't get away with quite so much bobbing, okay? Now, when you go to Italy, it's a whole different game. Because in Italy, you got to draw in your hands to make the point across. If you don't use your hands in Italy, they don't think you really care enough. And if you're Germany and you use your hands too much, well, you know what they think. So, now, a lot of times I also, in educating, there'll be a lot of things that educating the public, and you'll want to make a DVD, a YouTube video, or something like that. So, for example, I made 3,000 of these about a case. I gave it to U.S. congressmen. I gave it to anybody that would listen in the United States because it was about a little small island called Vieques, Puerto Rico. But nobody in here has heard of it. I'll get you a CD. But sometimes you want to tell so much more, and instead of talking it or writing it down, in today's world, you got to make a picture out of it. You got to make something I can plug in and watch on television. So that's important. Now, so the subject now is politics. The point is that there are 453 members of the U.S. Congress. That's a lot of people to get to agree to something, okay? But politicians are kind of like that. It's kind of hard to get them to get along sometimes. Every one of those guys comes to the U.S. Congress with his own plan, his own agenda, what he wants to accomplish, what's most important to him or her. And so you've got to remember that. So as you go around trying to advocate a position or a position of justice before these guys, you can't persuade all of them. So what you do is you pick out one guy. Let me tell you, he kind of looks like this, okay? There you go. Anybody recognize that guy? All right. You got to find a champion who will fight for your cause in that forum. Research your politicians. Know how they think. Know what causes they have championed before. Don't waste your time going to everyone. I've been to most every one of those guys right there. I've been in their offices, most of them on a few cases. And I talked a lot before I learned this valuable lesson, okay? Now, you can also help make politicians care by media interviews, by letters from constituents, by Facebook hits, by big financial supporters of theirs, and all of those things. Now, this has been the easiest political victory I've had. It's a sad case. This is the embassy in Kenya. Our law firm represents about 400 people who were injured or the families of the killed people that occurred in 1998 when Al-Qaeda and all their friends got together and blew up these embassies, these U.S. embassies in Kenya and then in Tanzania. And so there's a law in the United States that allows us to file a claim for those assets, to file against the governments that fostered them. There are two governments that fostered, actually three. There was Iraq, Iran, and the country of Sudan supported those terrorist activities. And we filed suit against them. We dismissed Iraq because the U.S. government told me I had to. But we got a verdict, a judgment, a decision to hold Sudan and Iran responsible. The problem, however, was that we represented a lot of people that were not Americans, but people that worked for the U.S. Embassy. And there's been a horrible distinction in the U.S. law that only allowed the American citizens to file claims. Now, I thought this was completely unjust. These African people gave their lives protecting the U.S. Embassy. That's unfair, and it's wrong that they can't come into the U.S. court system and be treated with the same respect. So we took our case to this guy here. There's our Rocky Balboa, Senator Lautenberg. Senator Lautenberg, we didn't have to do any media. We didn't have to do any press. We didn't have to do anything because Americans really didn't care so much about those Africans. But Senator Lautenberg saw the inherent policy benefits of taking care of the people who had taken care of the Americans. Okay? Easiest political case I've ever won. So, the next action, the next case here that I'd like to point out as an example is probably one of my all-time favorite challenges. Very sad for me personally and quite an adventure, but we had the privilege of representing 20 families who lost loved ones when a gondola was traveling in the Dolomite Mountains in Cavallese, Italy. And this gondola was carrying these 20 skiers back up to make another run when a U.S. Marine jet came flying through the mountains very low and very fast. And it cut that gondola cable, and those people fell for 8 seconds. Let me tell you something. 8 seconds is a long time if you know you're not going to make it. And so, because of that, the problem here, here's the gondola after it hit the ground. Pretty horrific. And here's the jet that did it. So, the problem in the case was that the law prevented justice because under the law, under NATO law, we would have to file this case in Italy. Italy has a slower system than America. It takes 8 to 10 years to get a verdict, to get a judgment, to get some result. And the problem is that the people that we represented, most of them were the children and the widows of the people that went up on the gondola. And you know, they didn't have 8 to 10 years to wait because they needed to rebuild their lives. They needed to get through this tragedy. And so what we did is we said, this is not fair. And so what we did is we began our media campaign. So let me take just a minute. I've always wanted to do this. Take this chalk. What did I do first? What I did first, I drew my triangle. Remember the triangle? So I drew the triangle. You going to help me with that a little bit? Thank you. And so let's go back down. I'm not that tall. Well, let's lower it first, and then I'll let. Lower? Yeah. Okay. All right. So this, you can't read my writing. It says rebuild lives. Okay. 8 to 10. It's 8 to 10 years. This is. That's Twisted Metal and Twisted Lives. All right, and this says here, so this is 8 to 10 years in Italian court system. This is Twisted Metal, Twisted Lives. And this says a German life is equal to an American life. See, the problem is that under the Italian system, the maximum amount was $250,000. But if the same accident had happened in America, it would have been an average of $2 million per person. We said that's fundamentally unfair. America caused this accident. It was gross. It was negligent. It was completely to blame. So why should we treat these families different than we would an American life? And so every time I would get asked a question on the network news, what I would do is I would say, they would ask me now, what do your clients think about the injustice of the criminal trial? And I would say, oh, it is horrible because they let the pilot go free. But what's really more of a tragedy is that it takes 8 to 10 years to get justice in the Italian system. And that the U.S. government cares more about rebuilding the cable car, the twisted metal of the cable car, than the twisted lives of the victims. And you know what? Their life is worth just as much as an American life. It is time for us to rebuild their lives. Okay? So, no matter what the question was, this is the answer. It's one of the greatest tests in the world because you always know the answer. So, the next thing that I recommend is that we talked about having a sympathetic victim. Instead of me talking, this is Cindy Rinkwitz. Cindy was young. She spoke English. She was articulate. She lost her father and she lost her sister both in this tragedy. And whenever she talked quietly. She talked straightforward, and she talked. Your heart jumped out wanting to help this girl. Nobody could find any fault with her. That's the importance of picking the right spokesperson. Now, so this, earlier I talked about a team. Sorry. This is the team, most of the team on cavalacing. You've got, over here you've got the German attorney, George Krummel, dear friend. That's me, a lot younger. This is Michael Verhoeven, who you've met a minute ago. And this is Roberta Sennell. She did media. Each one of the team had a different role. We're not all lawyers, but just because you're not lawyers doesn't mean that you're not an essential component for your team. After the media campaign started, we designed a bill in the U.S. Congress. As you know, in the United States Congress, you have to pass both houses. We have the Senate and the House. And a bill there has to pass both of them to get to the president, then it becomes a law. So we would win 100% in the Senate. In fact, Senator Biden, who's now vice president, came out and told these families one time about loss of in his life, his family. He lost his family. Senator Kennedy, the Kennedy clan is notorious, or tragically, for all the losses in their family. He came out and talked about losing his brother, President John Kennedy. He came out and told about losing all the other members of his family. And they had a real connection with these people. And so, unanimous, 100% of the Senate. But we'd go to the House of Representatives, and there was one guy. His name was John Murtha. And John Murtha controlled the committee in the House of Representatives that had to come out of. And he just said no. So we lost in the U.S. Congress. So what we did is we said, let's back up, let's rethink this. We've got a lot of momentum with our media. We have a lot of sympathy in the United States, but we also have a lot of sympathy in Italy. So we kind of worked a deal. We said, look, I didn't. We had some friends work a deal. And the U.S. promised to pay Italy back for whatever Italy paid these victims, which is what it's supposed to do under a NATO treaty. And the U.S. government thought that this would take 8 to 10 years. They thought that it'd be a small amount of money under the Italian court system. But what we did is we took the same piece of legislation, the same bill that would authorize $2 million per victim. We passed that same bill in Italy. And that is, for as far as I know, that's the largest compensation ever received by Europeans. I don't know if that's still true today, but that's at that time. So Italy passed it, the U.S. paid them back, and our people have begun to rebuild their lives. And that's a great joy for me. So the next case that I'd like to tell you a little bit about is, this here. I just wanted to make a point. I think we've already made it. But I was going to ask you which one of these people is worth more in the picture. And the obvious truth is that their life is valuable for all. Okay? No matter where you're from, your life is valuable. We should not make those arbitrary distinctions. Now, so the next case here, this is a situation down in Vieques, Puerto Rico. It's part of the United States. The people all speak Spanish. Most Americans don't know exist. Okay? Beautiful Caribbean island. Has anybody here been to the Caribbean? Anybody been to the Caribbean? Okay, no? Okay, all right. So it's a beautiful Caribbean island. They have wild horses that just run free on this island. They have they call a bioluminescent bay. Now, we have any scuba divers? Okay. You know when you scuba dive at night, you can see the microorganisms and they light up when you move your hand through the water? This has such a huge concentration that when you're just floating on top of the water, you see all of them light up. So you can see fish swimming underneath you. You just want to make sure they're small fish. You can see, you take your hand like this and you let the water fall out of it and it looks like little stars. I cannot do it justice. It's a beautiful island. Its beauty is actually so intoxicating that you don't know there's danger there. So let me tell you about the danger. So here's the island. The red section here is where the bombs are dropped. The white section is where the people live. And the blue section is where they store the bombs. Okay? The problem is that in the Caribbean, the wind always blows toward the people. So when you have bombs like this going off, all the debris, everything in that bomb is lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, aluminum, all sorts of dangerous metals. That blows into the place where the people are. So it's no surprise when we tested people. This is a hair test. And you take the hair out, put it in a spectrometer, and it burns the hair up, and then it tells you what's in that hair. So here, there's a little line. There's a little line here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it, but if it has that line at the very bottom, that means that you have that disease, that it's a very serious condition. So these lines are off the chart many times what is considered serious. So this person here has aluminum disease, lead disease, arsenic disease. All right? It's not an isolated incident. Look at here. So we did a study. We took 1,100 people tested their hair, and we came out with twice as many diseases. So every person has 2 heavy metal diseases on this island because they bombed the island for 62 years. So the people naturally are pretty sick. The yellow here is what you would normally expect to find in this population of cancer, heart disease, hypertension, and diabetes. But the red is what you actually find. So these are very, extremely sick people. So what do? I told you we picked out one person that the media could look at to become a symbol. And there's no better symbol than a small child, because you can't hold anything against a small child. And this poor little girl here, I met her many times. Her name was Mila V. Adams. Mila V. had a disease that occurs only once in every 100,000. Okay, very rare, called neuroblastoma. Okay, and so she had 9 tumors removed, 5 surgeries. She lived for about 2 years after these photos were taken. She went through so much pain in her life, but she became the symbol of this island. In fact, they call the island now Little Girl Island because of Mila V. After she was gone, I found these 2 sisters. Both of these sisters have cancer, terminal cancer, in the same family. How rare is that? So it's a big problem. We had lots of press, most of the press in the Hispanic press. So we began to gather support. We went to different groups. Here are the groups that became interested. The Hispanic community became interested. Environmental groups became interested. Churches became interested. People against war became interested. Veterans groups, ironically, became interested because they had been a part of a lot of these experiments with these different chemicals. Child groups and civil rights organizations. All of these groups became very interested. And so the Mayor Vieques called upon the president to solve it. He made a promise. When he was running for president, he promised to address the health crisis in Vieques. Now, he's had a few things to worry about since then, okay? So he hasn't got around to it yet. So we're hopeful and prayerful because next year is elections in the United States. And so we're hoping that if he won't listen to us, that he will at least listen to these Puerto Ricans in Florida. As you know, Florida has been the deciding factor in several American campaigns. But anyway, so these 2 guys here are our champions. They came up with a bill. We call it the Vieques Recovery and Development Act. Now, I wanted to really talk about this because this act here, we filed this originally as a court case, but this act is a better solution. It's a better justice solution because this act provided 2 things that litigation could never provide. It provides for a hospital for the sickness and research for the sicknesses because there's inadequate research dealing with heavy metals. Those are solutions that money just wouldn't fix, okay? So sometimes, the point is, sometimes legislation is a better solution than just going to court. All right.
Question?
Yes, of course.
Can you tell us why Puerto Rico was bombed?
Yes, I can. Because this was early in World War II. The Americans were afraid to protect the Caribbean, so they chose Puerto Rico. They chose Vieques because it was such a deep channel, water channel there. It's so deep submarines can go there, and it became a perfect place for them to train on because they could bomb Vieques from ships, they could bomb it from airplanes, and they didn't have to go far to refuel. And so it was like the perfect training ground for them. Testing ground. Now they also tested on this island not only bombs, but all the things used in the Vietnam conflict. They tried Agent Orange on the island, napalm, depleted uranium, all those sexy bombs, as I call them. So those are, that's why they chose it. Yeah, thank you. This is sort of a joke, but this is, we say this is This is our next subject, next case study, Costa Concordia. This was a little joke somebody gave me. I thought it was funny, but anyway. So here's what the industry would like for you to see, to think.
Through little eyes. Discover the world of Carnival. Let the fun begin. Carnival, the fun ship.
A lot of fun until something like this happens. Anybody remember that movie? So the sad thing is that was 100 years ago. And you would think after 100 years we would learn a few things. But we didn't. And so this happened. This was given to me by two of my clients that took this the morning after Costa Concordia. And it's sort of I guess they thought it was beautiful because they were living that day. But the problem is bigger than this one ship. What you have to remember is that this is an entire industry now that is in danger, that it has dangerous qualities. It's a $30 billion industry. Carnival has 53% of the market. Carnival is the owner of Costa Concordia and Costa Carnival. Carnival's the owner of Costa Concordia. Carnival has 100 cruise ships. There are 16.3 million passengers every year in this industry. Last year, Carnival paid 0 taxes to the U.S. government. This industry as a whole has very poor accident reporting data. And in fact, they work very hard to avoid reporting problems that they have. And currently, people ask me, what's happening today? I say, well, with negotiations, Carnival today is more interested in the sunken vessel than the sunken lives. And so that is where their effort and energy is. You would like to think that they wanted to help rebuild those passenger lives, that would be good, be good relationships to show that they cared, but they've not chosen that path. So a couple months ago, I went to the U.S. congressional hearings in Washington, and went and met with congressmen, talked to them about the problems with the industry, Senator Rockefeller on the Senate side best described the problem as this, that this carnival industry is a world unto itself. Okay? Now, what that means is that they have tried to keep the information of problems, accidents, avoid responsibility at all cost among all nations. And in fact, a lot of times what they do is they go to the U.S. and they say, if you regulate us, we'll just move our business to Europe. And then they go to Europe and they say, if you regulate us too much, guess what we'll do? We'll just move to the U.S. or we'll move somewhere else. So they've played us against ourselves. They've divided us against ourselves so that every one of those ships is its own little country. Now, Titanic happened. We know about that. We know about Costa Concordia. But here's what you may not know. You might not know that there have been 16 ships have been sunk since 1980. There have been 99 cruise ships that have run aground since 1973. Since 1990, they have had 79 fires above cruise ships. There have been 73 collisions since 1990. And there have been 101 ships that have been adrift since 2000. The sexual incidents of assault on these vessels are higher than normal populations. 2 times as high sexual predators on children on these boats. They go unreported because there's no independent agency, no government agency that is requiring them to release this information. In fact, I have met with victims of sexual attack on cruises, and they have told me that the crews did everything they could to sweep it under the rug. Do y'all have the expression, sweep it under the rug? Yeah. Okay. So, the other thing is there's a lot of illnesses on board these ships that are very little known. A lot of illnesses, a lot of bacterial infections go around on these ships. They also dump a lot of waste into the waters, which has its own consequences. So here's 7 things that every passenger should know before going on a cruise ship, okay? Number 1, once you step over that gangplank, you have left your country behind, okay? I tell Americans, I say, listen, when you step over that gangplank, there's no promise that the FBI is going to come rescue you. You can't call the Marines to come get you. You are in your own corporate kingdom, as I will, a kingdom that does not have voters, but responds merely to their own financial interest. And so they spend millions and millions of dollars lobbying to avoid responsibility, and they avoid thing. Now, there's one thing, is on the back of every ship, there's a flag. Have you ever noticed that? And they have a flag of the vessel. This flag is usually like a Panama or Bahama flag or some small tin-horn country. Now, why do they have that? Anybody know? Because when you go to those countries, they don't have a justice system. They have one, forgive me. They have a justice system, but the powerful have overcome the powerless already. So you're wasting your time if you want to go. And what you have to do legally, officially, is unless they've broken a different law, you have to go to Panama or Bahamas and try your case there if you want justice. I have yet to see a case won there, okay? So, now let's see if we got another picture here. There we go. So you would have thought after 100 years we would have learned a few things, okay? But let me tell you some of the things that they have in common, okay? Both these ships passed their inspections of the current regulations. They both followed the acceptable standards of their day, but the captain and the crew failed because the standards were inadequate. Both of these let the value and importance of entertaining overcome their importance of safety. Both had the latest technology of their day, and both of the crew was ordered to not alarm the passengers. Okay? I think this is important because I believe that some of the passengers that lost their lives on the Costa Concordia are the ones who believed that it was just an electrical outage and went back to their rooms when they were told to do so. The people that I have that survived, a lot of the people that I have that survived, they knew something was wrong when they said the power was out, and they went to the roof. And they got off first. Both of these boats took about 3 hours to sink. The CEO of Titanic White Star, he said this. He said when he reduced the number of lifeboats, the engineer said that they ought to have double the number of lifeboats. And the head of the company said, people don't pay to look at lifeboats. Let's take them off. Now, I think you'll have the same thing with Carnival. In Carnival, I think that you'll have decisions made where that boardroom said that, you know, it's more important to have shallow-hulled vessels. See, one of the differences between these vessels is that the Titanic sat down around 60 feet in the water. Costa Concordia only sat down 27 feet in the water, half as deep in the water, which caused it to lose its balance easier. All right? So I think that you'll have I think when we discover this case, we will find that they made a conscious decision. Now, that will come important later because of this concept I told you earlier about punitive damages. Remember how we talked about Ford, and Ford could have fixed it for $11 and they chose not to? I think the same will apply here. So these two, let me show you these two. These are two models, scaled. Oh well, let's see. Okay, two scaled models. Now, if you believe it or not, the Titanic sits down twice as far in the water, and is about 1/3 of the weight and half of the passengers. Now, if you remember Titanic history, you remember the ship went straight down. Remember, it broke in half, but it stayed even. Costa Concordia listed very quickly. Within the first 20 minutes, it started some listing, okay? And it listed. And the reason is it looks a little top-heavy, okay? I'm not an engineer, but that's my version. It's a little top-heavy. My dad says it's like surfing. It's like a 6-foot man surfing on a 3-foot board. And so in maritime law, they call this it's tender. It just means that it's unstable. And so what's the problem is that if it tips over 20 degrees, you can't get half of the lifeboats off of it. That's what happened in Costa Concordia. And so you had a lot of people that had to get into the water, and you had a lot of confusion over where people should go. Now, the other problem is that not only did people have to get in the water, but these ships are now so big that they're so big now. Look at all those compartments. You got a theater, you got a spa, you got a casino, and it's become what I call a labyrinth. Okay? Now, we don't have a lot of good footage inside because it went dark. Okay? So I don't have a lot of good footage, but I do have a footage of another Carnival ship sinking. I think this was the Carnival Paradise, but it kind of gives you an idea of the problem that can occur. The point is that it was hard for them to get out. They had to go down a flight of stairs. They had to run down a hall. And a lot of people get hurt. There's not easy exit from some of these vessels because it's so big, okay? The rules were designed many years ago, 20 years ago, that said you had to be able to get out in 30 minutes. That's no longer possible because of the sheer size of these vessels. Now, the sad thing is that now these vessels are even getting bigger, okay? So this is the Queen Mary II in the gray. The Titanic is the blue. And you'll have even more trouble getting out, okay? This is, if you can make this out, I don't get a good photo, but the largest one is the largest boat that is currently on the seas, the Allura. And it's so much bigger than Titanic and sits less in the water, okay? So it's not as stable. So I say I say this boat here, this is sort of my version of what Carnival's lawyers have done to the law, okay? We call it loopholes. I don't know if you have something like that in Germany. We call it loopholes. They got so many holes in this legal boat that there's no way that would float. That's the problem, is that the international standards for safety are like a loose association. The IMO, the United Nations organization, does not have strict ability to enforce standards. It has no criminal penalties, no civil penalties. It's all advisory. On these boats, there's no you have a air traffic controller in the airline industry. There's no boat traffic controller. When you file a claim, you have to go to the place on the ticket that says you have to file in Genoa. We found ways around that. And so here is, this is my Costa Concordia triangle. Here you have you have increased the value of life, plugged the legal loopholes in the bureaucracy, increased the technology, and you have a safer cruise. We filed in the U.S. because it's faster. We have more damages that we can claim for. The U.S. tries to get you back to where you were before. And it recognizes things like post-traumatic stress disorder, mental anguish, and things like that. Basically, we want to use the airline litigation as the model for what it should be. Okay? We also have punitive damages. This is a short clip here, very short clip of me talking about this paragraph.
To make sure that European lives are treated the same as American lives, we believe that by increasing the value of life, that companies like this industry will begin to spend more money on the front end to prevent accidents than paying money on the back end.
So, you've heard me say that before already. It's easy what you can find on the internet. This is the HES committee. This is the Carnival committee that oversees safety for the entire Carnival family. This is how we were able to file in the United States, is because they're the ones that set the standards, not Costa Concerta. Okay? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Just say under which flag the ship was arriving and in which country.
Yeah. Now the Costa Concordia, the flag of that vessel was Italy. And Italy is pretty well developed. Okay? Most of them are Panama, Bahamas, or things like that. But Italian law, yes.
Okay. And what kind of consumers did you advocate for from which nationalities?
Well, I advocate for Italians, Germans, English, Turkish, Chile, Americans, Russian, Ukraine, India. Yes.
Croatia, yes.
Croatia, yes. Okay. So this is a unique procedure never done under American law, but we did it. This was a seizure. We actually got the court to seize the vessel, a U.S. vessel, to bring attention to the fact that this could have happened at any place in the United States. Americans think that they're isolated from things like this. But we did this to show them that. This is an Italian captain, just like the Italian captain on the Costa Concordia. Same kind of crew, same standards. Okay? They're seizing the vessel. Now, so our next steps, a lot of people are asking that. You know, we could seize another vessel. We could seize assets. We could file claims against travel agents. We could file claims in other jurisdictions. We could file against staffing companies. We could file for the failure of the design of the vessel. We could also force Carnival to go through a very intensive discovery, which they have to present to us all the information that they have. A lot of companies will simply settle because they don't want to turn over a lot of very damaging testimony. Okay? Changes that need to be made. Change the flag of the vessel, that increases responsibility and accountability. IMO better standards that are enforceable. We need ticket limitations on the value of life, like in this ticket, the maximum was $75,000. Those should be removed. Those should be non-enforceable. You shouldn't have to go to Genoa to try your case. You should be able to file it wherever you're from. We need an ocean traffic controller. We need a government policeman on board that's independent from the company to investigate. And we need mandatory reporting of incidents and oversights. Now, that's a long way to go. It's a lot of things to do. But we've got some encouraging news lately. The industry has already responded by acknowledging that there's a problem. They have tried to put in place their own sort of ocean travel controller. It's not enough, okay? It's not big enough. But I think it's an acknowledgement that they have a problem. They have also begun to do mandatory training for people before the cruise leaves. It's a step in the right direction. But none of these are mandatory. None of these have the independence of a government oversight. And there's been no real commitment to investment into crew training or into pilot discipline. So, in closing, because we won't have time for questions, I hope we do, I'm sorry it's taking so long, but if it comes down and the captain is the only one held responsible, it will be a gross tragedy, okay? Because the company allowed this guy here to go to the island too many times without consequences. He had other incidents that were very risky. They never disciplined, okay? And just like the CEO of the Titanic who avoided responsibility, we need to make sure this guy here, this is the guy that started Carnival. I'm not saying criminal responsibility, I'm just saying civilly that the value of training, the value of captain discipline, the value of some of this technology should be increased on these guys so that they will embrace these changes and so they'll make the changes that are necessary. So, we're going to the Congress, we're going to the European Union, we're going to ask the German government to increase its standards. We're looking for people to help us. If you're in engineering, we want to help design better ships. If you're in law, we want to help you. We need help. So I'm here today telling you, all of you students and professors, that we want and need and ask for your assistance if you're interested in what's going on here, in the possibility of making a safer world. Now, I feel this tremendous burden on me, a duty to the past, a duty to the future generations to make it a future world. And so one thing that sort of really resonates with me is some of these faces that these are faces of people that were lost on the Costa Concordia, some on the Titanic. And I think we deserve the best way to honor them. The best way to honor them is to make the changes now so this never happens again. So thank you very much for your patience, and I'd like to take any questions. Yes, ma'am.
Where was Costa Concordia manufactured?
It was manufactured in Genoa, Italy. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Concordia.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, sir.
Is there anything that the consumer can do in terms of this ticket while he's boarding to make it not as bad? Like if you write on the back, I do not accept this invitation. Is that legal?
Oh, it's legal to try. I don't think they'll let you on board doing that. That's one of the things that's such a disadvantage here. So I tell you what I would encourage you to do if you're going to take a cruise. Take a cruise where the flag of the vessel is a flag where you don't mind going if you have a problem. Okay? And even then, when we went to the U.S. Congress, the cruise industry testified about the great standards of all U.S. flagged vessels. Oh, and under our U.S. flagged vessels, we have all these benefits and safety requirements. Guess how many U.S. flagged vessels there are in the cruise industry? Anybody want to guess? There's one. There's just one. Yeah.
It's better to do less action than just going like an individual consumer. Is it more effective? How many people are you representing?
Yeah. We have a difference of opinion among lawyers. I am of the strong opinion that it is not. It's not better. Because everyone has an individual claim. And when you look at it first, it seems all similar. But when you start listening to the stories, you find that everyone has their own individual story. and unique problems. So I have some clients that got off the boat and they're planning on going on another cruise. It's a few, not many. Most of my clients have some sort of like post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't know if y'all have that, but they wake up with nightmares, with headaches. They're afraid of confined spaces. And a lot of times it takes a little while for all these things to start manifesting themselves. And everyone has their own unique story. Then I have other people who broke arms because when the boat was tilting, they fell down. And of course we have folks who lost their loved one, which is, the ultimate. So I believe very strongly that everyone should be able to tell their side. It has been my experience with class actions that usually it's a smaller amount recovered, and you just fit everybody into the same cookie cutter mold. And I think that's an injustice. It's an injustice to them not only because of the value of their case, but it's an injustice because they deserve to tell their story. And the only way we're going to make a difference in this industry if people tell their story.
Your motives to go to Europe to advocate for people, I mean, is it altruism or what are your motives to do that? I mean,
Well, some people say I'm a crusader. I just believe that there's two types of lawyers. Some lawyers just work within the confines of the law. But there are other lawyers who see their responsibility much greater. In the beginning of the presentation, we talked about designing a society, being a society's justice engineer. I think I have a responsibility that when the law is wrong, to go change the law so there is justice. And I feel very passionately that this is one place that it really needs it the most. This is an industry that has voided responsibility since the Titanic. There's been little bitty changes along the way, but nothing that is caught to modern times. And I believe that we can save a lot of lives in the future if we take this window of opportunity now. Did I answer your question?
I'm just wondering whether there are not other cases in the U.S. I mean,
Sure. Yes, I'm involved in several crusades. One is to help the people down in Vieques that I showed you earlier to get health care. I have worked on behalf of, I ran for governor in Mississippi. I was a Democrat. Now, I don't know what you know about American politics, but they're not really popular in Mississippi. Okay, Mississippi is much more Republican state. I ran against one of the most powerful Republicans in the country because I didn't like the way that he was loyal to his friends and to the big companies, more loyal to them than the people of Mississippi. So, I just believe that we have a duty to change the world and to make it as it should be instead of just leaving it as it is. It's just part of my personal mission. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the ship was running under the Italian flag, right?
Correct.
So does that mean that you have to sue in Italy again?
No. Let me explain that. Very good question. That is the question, my number one question. Okay. The reason is that we did not sue the Italian company. We sued Carnival, who does business in Florida, who's headquartered in Florida. Now, they're also a Panama company, okay? But they're headquartered in Florida. We can file it in Florida. The reason Carnival is the most responsible party is because Carnival is the one who set the standards. See? Now, this captain, everybody wants to blame the captain, and the captain has plenty to blame. The problem is that Carnival set the standards, and they allowed him to get away with this many times before. Never did anything about it. They're the ones who designed the vessel. They're the one who required or did not require enough crew training. And so they are the most responsible party. If we're going to change the industry, we've got to hold Carnival accountable, not just the captain.
John, maybe you explain a little bit about the Hess Committee and the seizure of the Triumph.
Yes,
in this
yes,
context.
yes. Okay. So the Hess Committee is the carnival committee that oversees it. And they're all in the United States. And they're the ones who set the standards. And then we seized this vessel in Houston. Everybody said, how'd you get to Houston, Texas? Well, Carnival goes to Houston, okay? And what Carnival has been doing is they've been playing a shell game with the companies. They're Carnival, but they like to sometimes say they're Utopia, which is a Panama company, okay? And so they play these little, what we call jurisdictional games, where it's the power of the court to hear the case. And so they pretend like sometimes they want to have it both ways. They want to argue both ways. They want to say, oh, yes, but we're a Panama company. You can't hold us there. Well, there's a unique procedure in American law that if you've got a boat, you might leave the port and never pay for the damage you've caused. So, just like a criminal has to post bail to make sure he comes back to court. Okay, same way. So what we did is by seizing the vessel, which they were not very happy about, we got the court to seize that vessel until they put up the money that they would have to pay if they get a judgment against them. Okay. Did I say that? Am I speaking too much lawyer lingo, or did I answer your question?
I mean, you said that you're working for a lot of people from different nations, and would we have the same problem as in Africa before, or has that been resolved?
Has it the same problem as what now?
American citizens.
No, in American citizens, I don't have a problem filing them in the United States. That's not an issue at all. American jurisdiction is very broad, especially when there's American citizens involved.
But what about the other ones, the people from Ukraine and Germany?
Yes, I will be filing all of them in the United States courts.
Okay, so but there's no problem anymore because you gave us this case before when the embassies were bombed?
I filed that in the United States. Yeah. I filed that in Washington.
In the name of a German victim. Right?
No, those are all, those are an African victim, yes. But the law, we changed the law so we could do that.
Okay.
But the law is sufficient here because it's the American company that's responsible.
Okay.
Now, is it officially an American company? No, officially it's a Panama company. It just so happens that all their business is done in Miami, Florida. So that's, one of those things lawyers like to argue about. But if you do all your business in Florida, if you use the benefits of American society, then you should be able and should be fair for you to have to stand trial there.
How do consumers reach you, or how do you reach consumers?
Yes, I'll give you my card, okay? But you can write it down. My email is John, John, Jr. at Eaves Law. Let me say it with German. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. That comes to this little BlackBerry right here, so it's the best way to keep in touch.
So maybe I may ask another question. So, I'm a trained economist, and so I'm very familiar with the concept of a value of a statistical life, and you have been saying, well, you should put all lives to value, basically saying everybody is sort of worth the same value. And I have a lot of sympathy with this view, but from the economic perspective, you would not say, okay, there's like an individual with this value, because it's kind of a question that's, well, that's very difficult to answer. So to say, okay, your life is worth 2 million, that's kind of like a U.S. jurisdiction. So you said, well, you want to go to justice. Is it really helpful to say then, well, you can put a value to life? And what's your experience with European lawyers? Because I think we have much less of this cost-benefit view on policy and regulation than the U.S. does.
We got the $2 million from a study commissioned by President Reagan back in the 80s. And that was the average statistical value of life. And so, you know, it was kind of hard to set up the system in the legislation with all the, you know, to make it more, you know, to make it more mathematical, calculate, more accurate. So for legislators, you know, keep it simple. And so that's why we came up with $2 million. Obviously, lives are calculated based on the economics of life. What we try to do in the American system is to recognize not only economic damages, but also some of the things that are most valuable to us. You know, it's hard to quantify happiness. It's hard to quantify, you may be able to expand more than me, but it's hard to quantify the love that you have for your parents or the love you have for a child. But it's unfair to take that child or that loved one away and there not be any consequences. And so we try to replace that economically. And the idea is, although we will never accomplish the goal of giving you what you've lost, that's absurd. But what we will do is we will not let the company that took it from you, we will not let them benefit under the law from taking that from you. And so my mission is simply to increase the value every way I can because I think it will render better decisions. Now, obviously, there's a lot more at it than I can explain in a lecture. But I do believe that we should treat Germans and Americans the same, that there should not be a distinction. There should not be an distinction just because of where you're born. But that's my personal opinion.
It's a problem of the different legal systems, that it's more likely for consumers to get redress in the States than, for example, in Europe. And I totally agree with you that the value of a European and an American consumer is the same, but I think the problem is the legal system, and you can't really compare it. And that's a question in lawsuits.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I would argue that you, as a justice engineer, have a duty to change the legal system, to make it more just, whether that's talking to politicians, whether that's advocating the value of life. That's what I'm advocating and asking for your help with.
When should consumers go to consumer protection agencies, and when should they go to lawyers?
Let me tell you, I don't know the answer to that. And the reason I don't know is because in America we don't have strong consumer associations. We don't have that benefit. In fact, that's something that I currently am the spokesperson on Costa Concordia for 3 Italian consumer organizations. And we are currently investigating the logistics of bringing one of those in the United States. Because I think there's a need there for consumer organizations that is not being met in the United States. Unfortunately, in the United States, lawyers are really your only response. And I think that's sad, and I think there's an unfulfilled need in America.
Thank you very much, John, for being here and giving us your viewpoints on the Costa Concordia case in particular, but also on the relationship between law, media, and the politics. And I guess we also see this in Europe, that everything is very much intertwined, not only in the United States. Thank you all also for being here. And there will be some coffee outside, so if you still have a couple of minutes and want to exchange a little bit on the lecture or whatever, you're very welcome to join us there. Thanks.
Thank you.